Fox News Alert back live to the Christ Tabernacle Church, which is in Queens, New York, and we are now about a half an hour away from the beginning of the funeral for Officer Rafael Ramos, one of the NYPD officers who was assassinated in his patrol car last week, and the funeral again to start at the top of the next hour.
Well, moments ago, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio arriving. He is expected to speak at the service.
Brian Yennis is live at the scene where tens of thousands are gathering to say their final goodbyes. Brian?
Good morning, Leland, Connell, and Anna. That's right. We've seen hundreds of NYPD officers here gather all morning. And what you can see really in front of me, back of me, actually, the Christ Tabernacle Church, you have rows of NYPD officers lined up along the roadway there, ready for the hearse, carrying the body of Officer Rafael Ramos to pass through to his final resting place after the service at the church. Now, the church is very important to Officer Rafael Ramos. He was a member there for 14 years at this congregation of about 4,000. He was an usher, a pastor, a humble and a church-going man. And, of course, now he's being laid to rest here today in front of his family, his wife, and two children, two boys, Justin and Jaden, who spoke yesterday. Here, really, the officers are not speaking to anyone, really. That's a tradition. They don't really speak at these kinds of ceremonies in the funeral here. They're lined up with their white gloves on and their full uniforms, ready outside. There's speakers out here playing some music, some somber music. And again, they're just all ready here to salute Officer Rafael Ramos for the last time. Again, Mayor Bill de Blasio came in about 5 minutes ago in a motorcade. The NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton also arriving here this morning. He tweeted just moments ago, actually, "Our hearts are heavy today as we lay to rest one of our finest, Police Officer Ramos. We will never forget." Again, it's all preparation here. There is only one protester we've seen with a sign that says, "God bless the NYPD, dump de Blasio." That's about it. But besides that, it is just in preparation for the ceremony that's going to begin at 10 a.m. Officer Rafael Ramos, again, known as somebody with an infectious smile, somebody who took his time to volunteer when he was an NYPD officer on duty as an usher at this church, helping elderly people to their seats, helping with the elevators graciously. He was also part of a marriage pact, essentially, at the church, helping others at the congregation through their church and continuously praying for them. Today, Officer Rafael Ramos and his family will no doubt get thousands and thousands of prayers from those that are expected to be here today and from all over the country and around the world, really, as we honor him and his family and all that he has done in service of this country and this city. So, again, we are just moments away from his funeral service, and Mayor Bill de Blasio will eulogize the officer. Guys?
Brian, yesterday we saw, just ahead of the wake, we saw Ramos's casket, of course, with a flag draped over it, being carried into the church on the shoulders of 6 of his fellow officers and another officer saluting the casket as it was taken inside. What else can we expect from the service today? You mentioned Bill de Blasio speaking, Vice President Joe Biden speaking. Of course, during police funerals, there's often the bagpipes will come out and play. What else can we expect? What sights and sounds will we be hearing and seeing?
Right, Anna. Well, we can expect a traditional ceremony in that sense. We have the NYPD Honor Guard. There will be about 8 ballbearers that will actually carry the casket with their white gloves. They're not usually know him personally. It's just other officers that are there that will carry his casket. You mentioned the bagpipes, and his hearse will travel to his final resting spot with the officers on the side. NYPD helicopters will also fly over in the missing man formation. They'll be missing one helicopter in honor of Officer Rafael Ramos. Again, this is all part of the traditional ceremony that we expect today. As you said, Vice President Joe Biden will be expected to make remarks as well. Anna?
The other thing, Brian, is that the church itself, which we're looking at now with the wreath above the doors and the people walking in and out of it, such a big part of Officer Ramos's life, as you rightly referenced earlier, is obviously not big enough to hold even a fraction of the number of people who are there and the tens of thousands of officers outside. How will they know what's going on inside? I know yesterday they had some monitors set up. Is something similar happening today for all those officers and others that are gathered there?
Right, that's a good question. About 850 people can fit inside that church, and like you said, there are thousands here. Yesterday, there were giant television screens set up as the family and friends and family spoke. Today, you don't see that. What you see is just speakers outside. Perhaps they'll be able to play the audio, but we don't see television screens like we saw yesterday. There is going to be a live web stream, though, of the funeral service on the church's website for anybody who would like to watch. But again, right now, it's just the officers lining up ready for the hearse and for Officer Rafael Ramos, and there's just music playing on the speakers here in the streets of Queens, New York, guys.
And it's not just, New York's finest who are in attendance here. We've had JetBlue actually volunteered to fly in for free officers from across the country, hundreds of them, to show their final respects as well.
Exactly, Brian Leland here. Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Leland.
Well, I was just going to get to the sense that as we've been talking all morning about the controversy that has been surrounding the officers' killings, and then obviously the response to it. The mayor, there's a lot of officers who are upset that the mayor showed up there. I'm wondering if you get a sense while you're there of that tension that's existed between the mayor and the police force and those kinds of things, or whether everyone has been able to put aside their political differences, put aside the very tough rhetoric. In fact, one of the Police Benevolent Association leaders saying essentially that the mayor had blood on his hands, those kinds of really tough words that we saw in the wake of these killings, have been able to put those things aside and simply focus today on Officer Ramos, or whether you still get a sense of that tension as we watch that video again of Bill de Blasio coming there to the church.
Leland, there's no sense of political tension here whatsoever. Today is about Officer Rafael Ramos, and you can tell when you look at the officers and you see the environment here, there is no sense that anyone is here to talk about politics, to talk about the whatever Pat Lynch had to say, who's in charge of the police unit, whatever de Blasio had to say. None of that. It appears this environment has really taken the tone as what the family has said. Rafael Ramos' family has come out and said they don't want to hear anymore from Pat Lynch or Mayor Bill de Blasio about the politics behind this. They want to hear about Officer Rafael Ramos and the other officer, Win Jin Liu, who lost their lives on duty. And if you can see here today, there is no sense of anyone talking about nothing except for the memories of Officer Rafael Ramos, and everyone is here with a keen purpose to remember him and what he's brought and what he's done for this city and this country, guys.
All right, thank you, Brian. It's you knew that would happen if you've had any history of following this police department. I'm sure all the police departments around the country are similar, but there's a time and a place for everything. Emotions were high last week when Pat Lynch said what he said and when other officials said what they said. But today is a day to remember the family. I know when Bill Bratton sent his tweet out this morning, the police commissioner talking about heavy hearts as they laid to rest one of their finest police officers, and Officer Ramos, he was talking about that and having the focus, as it will be, starting 20-some minutes from now, on this officer and his family today and nothing else.